everyone, and thank you for joining Spectrum News in partnership with AARP for Decision 2026 Community Conversation with Congressional Candidates. I'm Holly Gregory. And over the next hour, we're going to hear from some of the candidates running for Congressional District 16. I'll ask questions about issues that they could face in Congress, and the candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question. And if the time allows, there will also be lightning round questions, which require yes or no answers. We will rotate who answers first and last, and candidates, you'll have a timer in front of you, so please stick to the allotted time for those questions. And please remember also, this is not a debate, it is a conversation, and candidates, we ask you to please keep your responses focused on the issues and to avoid any personal attacks. We do have 7 candidates with us tonight. Joining us, we want to introduce them to you now in alphabetical order. We have Mark Davis, John Harris, Kelly Kirshner, Tamika Lyles, Glenn Pearson, Jan Snyder, and Eddie Speir. Thank you all for being here. Want to mention that Sydney Gruters and Ed Pope are also running, but they declined to join us tonight. And before we get started, let's take a closer look at District 16. It's currently held by Vern Buchanan, who is retiring, and the boundaries did change significantly during mid-decade redistricting. This district remains centered around Manatee County, but now includes a large portion of South Pinellas County and eastern Sarasota County. It also extends east to include all of DeSoto and Hardee counties. So once again, thank you all for being here for our conversation with the candidates. We have lots to get to, so we'll begin with our first question. And tonight we're starting on the topic of affordability. And that question is this: right now inflation is at 3.5%. And while that is an improvement from what it was a couple of years ago, that is still an increase in prices that were already high. And families are telling us about how they are struggling with the cost of living. So how would you describe the state of the U.S. economy? And what is Congress's role in making life more affordable for citizens? You'll each have 1 minute to answer this. And Mr. Mark Davis, we'll let you start.
Awesome. First off, I want to say thank you for having us and me. This is awesome. I've never ran for politics before, so I'm just an observer here. So, just to preface, I'm just a pissed off dad in the middle of red Florida, that decided to stand up and do something. But as far as affordability, this is kind of where our campaign shines. And I used to work in corporate retail, and I understand the pressures that tariffs put onto a pricing system. And you don't promise to lower prices and then insert pricing pressure into a system. I mean, that just doesn't make sense. So these ridiculous tariffs that Trump put in place, we need to start knocking those back and have common sense trade laws put in place, and something that is approved by Congress. Too much power has been shoved up to the executive branch right now, and you have a showboat and a cowboy. No offense, but you have a cowboy up there, right? That isn't taking anybody's cues. He's not hearing from Congress. He isn't. So anyway, we need to get rid of tariffs. We need health care for all. Universal health care will help as well. And this campaign is all about actually lowering prices.
Time is up, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. And John Harris, what would you do to make life more affordable?
Yeah, so just to go on that, the state of the economy, I really feel like everybody is feeling the pinch. As a matter of fact, I am one of those people. I make decent money, but the more I make, it doesn't actually seem like we actually get ahead. So that was one of the things that motivated me to run. In terms of what Congress's role is, Congress should really be focusing on eliminating the unforced errors. Like Mark Davis said, tariffs are a huge issue. Taking back control of who gets to decide whether or not we go into wars of choice overseas, which is artificially raising the cost of gas back at home. And then looking at ways that we can ease pressures for the folks here in our district, whether that be making home insurance more affordable through reinsurance backstop, or making sure that health insurance is affordable. Florida has the largest consumers of the ACA, and when the subsidies ended, premiums tripled. So we need to get focused on that.
Thank you. Kelly Kirshner.
Thank you, Holly, very much for having us, AARP and Bay News 9. Really an honor to be here. I would echo a lot of what Mark and John have already said. We can add to that a 78% increase just in the past 3 years alone of property insurance for this entire region. We need a Congress that recognizes that these types of catastrophic events of the hurricanes here, they're just as much happening of fires, tornadoes, earthquakes, etc. We need a national reinsurance plan. We need to stop committing these unforced errors. We were told we would have no wars of choice. Floridians are now paying $400 more a month than what they were paying in February. I actually would differ with that inflation mark of 3.5%. I think it actually went down because there was a slight decrease in gas, but we're now back up to $4 a gallon. And so we see time and time again, tariffs, wars of choice, elimination of health care subsidies, all of these things that are putting undue pressure on families.
Thank you. And Tamika Lyles.
Well, I have worked in advocacy for quite some time. And so I've dealt with families that have been in crisis for more than a decade here in Florida. Affordability is not a new issue. It's a new talking point. It has gotten worse. With the war of choice, of course, it has gotten worse. Of course, with the tariffs, it has increased that. But we've had issues here with affordability, with our rent, with now the insurance. And yes, as Kelly said, of course, our natural disasters also add to that. But the issue is that we need affordable housing here. We need more government funding to support when those hurricanes come through and families are really pinched and cannot afford. And Congress has the ability to implement a lot of these things that they just have not implemented.
All right, thank you. And now to Mr. Pearson. What is the role of Congress when it comes to making life more affordable for people?
Well, Congress has a role to supervise, to hold the executive accountable, the executive branch accountable. And people here in CD16 are hurting. I know this because as a small business owner, I work with my clients on a daily basis, helping them navigate Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, traditional insurance. And I deal with people who cannot make ends meet. And why is that? Because Congress has failed to do its job. It capitulates to the executive. We have a war of choice that's making things worse. Things are not going to get any better right now. So what we need to do is make sure that Congress reclaims its responsibility to supervise and to actually be a co-equal branch of government and not just defer to power, not just defer to wealth, not defer to this one man. Congress can do a lot to help bring costs back down, and that's where I stand on that.
All right, thank you. And now to Jan Snyder.
Well, first, thank you and the sponsors. But I do not like the goal being affordability. I think in this wealthy country, Congress should aim for economic security for everyone. Affordability is a transitory concept. People should deserve living wages, quality public education, raise the minimum wage from $7.25 since 2009. We need quality social programs. We need to take care of children, school lunches, pre-K, so people can aspire to better things. Of course, we should get rid of wars of choice, but the worst part of those is we're murdering people for nothing. Yes, economic security is a great goal, but preventing murder and loss of life is, to me, an even greater goal.
Thank you. And finally, Eddie Speir.
Yeah, thank you for having all of us, and it's an honor to be the only Republican here. Shouldn't be the case, but it is. And I want to shout out to Polk County. I'm not sure if you mentioned Polk County is also in the district as well. Southwest Polk County, Fort Meade specifically in that area. So inflation is the hidden tax, and inflation happens when we continue to spend money that we don't have. It's just a simple rule. We need to spend the money that we have. We need to not spend money that we don't have because we went another $2 trillion into debt, and that's a Republican-controlled all three branches of government, and we still went $2 trillion in debt. Now, what that means is anywhere from $12,400 to $20,000 for every individual taxpayer if they're making around $100,000 as a household. That's a huge problem and a huge burden, and it's the hidden tax that is causing the depreciation of our dollars to not go nearly as far as they should, as they would if Congress did its job and went to single item bills.
All right, thank you all for that first question. We're going to continue on with question number 2, still on the topic of the economy. And that is, Congress passed a bipartisan bill recently, a housing bill that became law without the president's signature. And it aims to make home ownership more affordable. It does that by limiting the single family homes that can be purchased by companies, and also has provisions to make it easier to build affordable housing. What provisions of this bill do you support or oppose? And what additional steps do you think you would take to make housing more affordable for families? And once again, you'll have 1 minute to answer this question. And this time we will start with Mr. John Harris.
Yeah, so I think the bill as it's structured, I agree with most of it. I think the problem is that it doesn't go far enough when we talk about institutional money buying single family homes. And I can remember a time when I was, looking for my first home, and I was making, again, decent money, about $50,000 a year, and I was able to purchase a $200,000 home. Now, a similar home of that size is going to cost you, probably about $350,000, and wages have not kept up with that. So I agree. I just think that as we look at Florida and how many people kind of migrated down here, we need to start eliminating all corporate money from being able to buy single family homes. If you have investors who want to buy a house and rent it out, that's fine. But I think that we need to eliminate all of the big hedge funds and all of the corporate money from buying homes.
Kelly Kirshner.
Thank you. I would agree with John. We should be going a lot further. The cap now is 350. I think it remains to be seen the loopholes that are in that. Why we need to allow any company to come into our neighborhoods and buy 350 homes and then turn around and rent it and put that pressure on the already exorbitant rents that we have is insane. I would go back to this larger picture, and I appreciate what Jan's talking about with economic security. The other piece that we haven't addressed is we were just told 10 days ago, Social Security will pay out at 81% of what it's paying out today in 2032. If you look at property insurance, 78% greater than what it was 3 years ago, in addition to everything that Eddie said, and I really appreciate as a Republican, Eddie, that you're recognizing that, of $2 trillion increase in debt. And you add that to all of these other issues, why do we have a Congress that is inept at addressing any of these issues and bringing some level of serious conversation across the aisle to address them as it relates to affordability in your home, to health care, to your child going to college, to property insurance, health insurance, et cetera?
All right, we're going to dig into Social Security in just a moment. But first, Tamika Lyles on the topic of housing affordability. What do you support about this new law? What do you think needs to change?
Well, I think Senator Warnock, it's a great start. But yes, I agree that we do need to go a bit further. But there's a lot to do when we look at the cost of the homes, when we look at, as my colleague said down there, when we look at the wages and the ability to actually obtain a loan to obtain these homes. And we've cut back on the first-time home buyers incentives. Those things helped people to be able to obtain a home for the first time. Now we don't have that security anymore. So that causes an issue. But if we don't have the income to afford the home in the first place, then they're not going to be able to obtain the loan. So there's a lot of things that are in the midst of just buying the home. It's not one issue, but yes, we don't need corporate buyers coming into our neighborhoods buying up our homes. So I 100% agree.
Glenn Pearson?
And I agree with everyone else when it comes to this is a good place to start. It's a very good place to start. However, you look at the other things that are standing in the way of people being able to, first-time home buyers being able to afford to get into the market right now. Interest rates are high. Interest rates have to be able to come down in order for people to be able to afford it. My son is in his early 30s and he doesn't have any visions of being able to actually own a home. That's not what the American dream is all about. We need to have a livable wage here. I work with people on a daily basis who are working very hard, but they make just a little bit too much money to qualify for Medicaid, not enough to be able to afford health insurance, and how are they going to be able to put money down on a $350,000 home? So it's a good place to start, but we have a long way to go.
Jan Snyder?
The bill is a good start, and it's very good Congress got something significant done on a bipartisan basis. But the bill does have a number of ambiguities and loopholes, such as definition of the entities that can own the 350 homes and what else they can and can't own. But anyway, we have to have more economic security. Congress cannot directly control mortgage rates, but by creating jobs, adjusting inflation, they can help. Congress can restore funding to FEMA so you don't have to fear losing your home and you don't have to fear catastrophic disasters. Congress can provide social services so that if both parents are working, they don't have to worry totally about their children and child care. There are a number of things. Congress cannot directly control insurance rates. There was a Supreme Court case, and it said it was a federal issue. Congress gave it back to the states, but Congress...
Got to wrap up for time now.
Okay,
thank you.
Congress can affect reinsurance rates, and most certainly should. And
Eddie
I
Speir.
apologize. Thank you.
That's okay. Eddie Speir.
The 9 scariest words are, I'm with the government and I'm here to help. There's a lot of concern that I have with this law, especially as it ties into the Live Local Act and what's happening in Tallahassee. So affordable housing becomes a canard, which then allows developers, and we need to call these developers out and say that it's Pat Neal, it's Carlos Baroof, it's Randy Benderson. These are the developers here in District 16 that are causing higher and higher density through a concept called land use arbitrage. So they come in and they buy their politicians, and we've got a problem with corruption. So I know we've got kind of people that are excited about a blue wave here, and people were excited about a red wave, and I've said we don't need a blue wave, we don't need a red wave, we need a tidal wave to take out all the corruption that is causing Florida to be paved over.
And finally, on this affordable housing question, we'll wrap it up with Mark Davis. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the corruption, that we have specifically in Florida has all been bred from Republicans. As long as I've lived here, Republicans have been in control. So, where does the corruption start and where does it end? It starts and ends with Republicans. And then as far as like the housing affordability issue, I have a pretty large following. We have 300,000 followers online. I talk to constituents all day long. We have a podcast where we talk to people, and their issue isn't necessarily that prices are too high or that first-time home buyers can't afford it, or they want a strategy, So like where is the strategy right now? Right now, I don't see a strategy. Do you want to drive prices down as low as you possibly can, and then you're going to make everybody upset with lowering home values? What new home buyers want is they want incentives. They want the new home buyers tax credit back. When I was a new home buyer not too long ago, I loved that Energy Star rebate. I'd go out and buy a tankless water heater or new windows, all that stuff. So bringing back that excitement is what new home buyers want. They want relief now. The new housing bill is just a distraction.
All right. Thank you all for that. Let's keep moving on the economy as promised. We're going to talk about Social Security, near and dear to the hearts of our partners here at AARP and so many others. And that is the Social Security trustees. They're now projecting that the retirement trust fund will be exhausted in 2032, so not too far off. Are you prepared to take up real reform to Social Security and Medicare to ensure future solvency? And what specific reforms would you be willing to support? And we will start this question off with, again, you have 1 minute, Mr. Kelly Kirshner, go ahead.
Thank you. To steal Eddie's line of a canard, one of the biggest canards is that Social Security is an entitlement. Social Security is something that people have earned from a lifetime of work. And I think it's should be all of our commitment that what they earned is what they should get. I think the larger picture in this country is we have a constant war right now on wage earners. And really, the billionaire class that do not have a W-2, they are literally paying a tax rate that Warren Buffett has told us years ago. He's paying probably less than 5% effectively, while his personal assistant is paying, 20+% per year. And it is high time that we address that. Simultaneous to this, we have Elon Musk, J.D. Vance that are telling us about our population decline, and yet somehow we're spending $75 billion on ICE and a show about deportation. We need to have an understanding of a vibrant population, of a workforce population, and I think hopefully we can get into that conversation on how we have a workforce that is paying into the Social Security Trust Fund that guarantees that for those who have earned the benefit.
Tamika Lyles.
Well, I will say that, look, we have over 70 million Americans that receive Social Security. Social Security, though, is for 40% of them is barely making ends meet. We have a lot of individuals out here that are having to go back to work because it's just not enough. It's not enough because, again, we look at affordability and all of this stuff is tied in together, that it is simply not enough. We need to oppose privatization of that. We need to ensure that we remove the cap. We need to ensure that people have enough to make it through. They're only receiving that benefit once a month. And that benefit is not covering everything that they need. And we have to have representation in DC that actually is able to express these things, because it doesn't happen. These serious conversations don't happen in DC because most of them don't have to deal with that.
Mr. Pearson.
When I work with my clients on a daily basis, talking about Social Security, they are afraid if Social Security benefits are cut. They don't know how they're going to make it. Right now, it's very difficult for them to be able to make ends meet. We can protect this program. What we need to do is raise the cap, the payroll tax cap. We need to do that. That's something seriously that can happen. There is absolutely no reason for this program to be in jeopardy at all. All we have to do is have the political will, make sure that we do that. People may be crying, they may be saying, well, no, I've already paid my fair share. Well, why should the super wealthy not pay the very same rates as the rest of us? So the payroll tax cap needs to be raised so that Social Security can continue on.
Jan Snyder, how do we protect Medicare and Social Security?
Medicare, first of all, the Republicans voted several times to turn it into a voucher system called a premium support system. Don't do that. I'm a Medicare for all person, and it would be vastly less expensive to move to Medicare for all. On Social Security, absolutely raise the cap. It now applies, I think, to close to $190,000 of income a year. People making more than that have more ways to divert income and can better afford it. What you don't do, though, is raise the age. Lawyers like me, we can work longer. There are a lot of people who can't work beyond 65 or 67, so don't raise the age. Is that my minute?
It is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eddie Speir.
Well, I think that we need to recognize this as political theater. The federal government absolutely has the ability to meet its commitments and must meet its commitments that it made to the citizens that paid into Social Security. I don't think this is another excuse for a more progressive tax or any other tax, because that's what the government ends up doing every time. They see a crisis, manufacture a crisis, and then find a way to tax somebody else. And then, no, let's tax this person. Oh, tax this person. Let's tax this person. Let's make this fair. We need to avoid those kind of political theater discussions and recognize that the problem that we have is spending in other areas. We need to attack fraud in all of the government. We've got tools in AI right now that can detect fraud across the board. We should be cutting fraud and cutting the bureaucracy immediately.
Thank you. Back up to Mr. Mark Davis. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Medicare, I agree with Jan. Universal health care, Medicare for all. This is where we need to go. and we have a very unhealthy country. We're not doing it right. A majority of the established countries and advanced countries out there have universal health care, and it's just something that we deserve to give the people. And then secondly, the whole social security argument, I think, has gotten a little ridiculous. Right now, we are, they just have like this Trump money or whatever it is, where they invest new kids and then they're supposed to be millionaires by the time they're a MAGA 21-year-old or whatever. But the problem is that they're not going to have a job. Their AI is going to take their job. Their AI is going to take their health care. Their AI is going to take their savings. So we need to look at these savings plans and actually bolster them and increase them, because there's going to be a lot of desolate people out there that are going to lose their health care, lose their benefits, because they're going to lose their job.
And John Harris.
So on Medicare, we have to realize that the health insurance industry right now is artificially raising the cost of health care. And we need to basically look at that as an antitrust issue. We need to, break up the monopolies that these insurance companies are, having on the healthcare industry, where they basically get a cut of your dollar every single step of your care, whether that's your healthcare provider, your pharmacy benefits manager who sets the rate for your medicine, the pharmacy that you have to go to because they're in network, all of that. And then as we look at Social Security, speaking for myself, it shouldn't be a running joke in my generation that we're paying into this system that we're never going to get. And that's tragic. So my response to that is we need to get rid of the cap. You get taxed at every level, income level, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, everybody has to do their part to make sure that we keep this promise to those who have paid into the system.
All right, appreciate all those answers. Let's do a lightning round here. We'll start off with our first lightning round, and for these we would like yes or no answers, please. So first up for our lightning round, the question is, how would you vote, how will you vote, yes or no, on the property tax amendment that is coming up in November, Amendment 3, and we will begin with Tamika Lyles. Yes or no on that?
No.
Okay, right on down the line.
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
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 All right, thank you. Next lightning round question, would you support a statewide moratorium on data centers? And we will begin this one with Glenn Pearson. Do you support a moratorium?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, please ask this question again. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
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 All right, a yes all around. And our third lightning round, do you think the Supreme Court was right when it rejected President Trump's executive order ending birthright citizenship? And for this, we will begin with Jan Snyder.
Certainly, yes.
No.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
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 All right, thank you. Let's move on to our next big topic. We'll go back to minute-long questions. And for this one, we're going to talk about immigration. And the question is, do you support how ICE is currently carrying out immigration enforcement? If not, what changes would you make while still ensuring border security? And again, 1 minute for everyone to answer this. And for this question on immigration, we will begin with Eddie Speir.
ICE has been given a mandate, and they need to follow the law. Now, do I agree with every law enforcement task that's ever been done? No, there's always going to be problems, there's going to be challenges. And when I went to the border and recognized the attack on our country through Iran, Venezuela, and Nicaragua, and their coordinated efforts to bring in jihad into this country, there's still people that need to be removed, and we need to do that in a way that is both kind and expedited, so that certain people that are here that have been been active members of our society get fast-tracked. But on the other side, they still need to be deported, and we need to have immigration reform so that they can get fast-tracked and come back. But we still need to continue the deportation and follow the law so that people that come into this country legally.
Thank you. Mark Davis.
Yeah, I think there's no debate here. The majority of Americans that are actually paying attention agree that we need to abolish ICE, or we need to immediately stop ICE. This has gotten ridiculous where they're killing actual Americans now on the street. And what you have noticed is that 10 years ago, or whatever it was, when Donald Trump came down the escalator, what you're seeing now was he was lying. Immigration wasn't out of control. Immigration was relatively flat for the past 20 years. And now we're dumping hundreds of billions of dollars into an agency that is working for one man. And that man is not a very good organizer. You can see it with the reflecting pool even. He can't even figure that out. And now we're trusting him with people's lives. This is insanity. Yes, we need to abolish ICE. Hell, I would say pause the entire government until Trump is out of office.
John Harris, to you now.
So I guess for me, my focus would probably be on reducing ICE's budget and bringing it back to what it was prior to this administration, and obviously looking at their training and I guess tactics when it comes to interacting with the public, because I have two daughters that we're teaching Spanish because that's part of their Puerto Rican heritage, and I don't necessarily want them stopped on the side of the road because they are speaking a different language. But I also think that this speaks to the broader issue that is immigration. We have for a long time said that there is a problem with immigration on both sides of the aisle, but nobody has actually, stepped up to fix it. And really what that comes down to is providing the resources, whether that be, judges, case officers, the people to actually do the due diligence on the folks who want to come here and make sure that they have a clear defined pathway and the resources to do it so that they don't have to wait years. This type of process can be carried out in months.
The question is, what do you support? What would you change when it comes to immigration enforcement? To Kelly Kirshner now.
Thanks, Holly. Just want to go back quickly on Social Security. We should raise the cap, but we need a conversation on how do billionaires start paying into our system too and stop the ridiculous levels of inequality in this country. Quickly on immigration, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Guatemala. Immediately after that, I worked for USAID, really improving Mayan farmers' income, which is one of the biggest issues for why people obviously come to the United States from Mexico, Central America. Fascinating that part of the first thing that DOGE cuts is AID, that's less than 1% of our budget. And then where do we up and put $80 billion is having thugs on our streets with masks. They have no identification that they're with the federal government, no names whatsoever. The show needs to stop. And as Eddie said, it's time for comprehensive immigration reform. The level of hypocrisy in the state of Florida that sits on a three-legged stool of agriculture, construction, and a service economy that has historically been dependent on immigration, really since the ending of slavery, is ridiculous, and it's time to have an honest, bipartisan conversation on immigration reform.
Tamika Lyles.
All right, so I am 100% for abolishing ICE. We have allowed that agency to employ individuals who never intended to do what was right, who never intended to respect our United States Constitution or due process. We have separated families. We have put people in detention centers, inhumane ways. And the issue here is that we can have secure borders and we can have a humane way of handling immigration. It is not a choice of one or the other. So we do need an affordable, sensible pathway to citizenship. And we do need to treat people respectfully, regardless of where they come from. Our Constitution states this. We have due process in black and white there that is there for all individuals, and yet we don't do it.
Glenn Pearson.
I'd like to briefly go back to your other question because I didn't realize that you had asked anything about Medicare, and I am definitely for strengthening that program, never privatizing Medicare, and never raising the age on qualification for Medicare as well. I've been endorsed by the Democratic Progressive Caucus of Florida. That's a chief issue on their platform and something that I feel very strongly about. With regard to ICE, you can't reform ICE. They're doing things that it's like saying, well, let's reform the Gestapo. That doesn't make any sense. We have to get rid of that. Naturally, we need enforcement of removing violent offenders, but not ripping families apart and sending them off to concentration camps. These things, we don't have to sacrifice our morals, our values in order to make sure that we are safe and secure in the United States.
Jan Snyder?
There's no doubt ICE is killing people. They're housing them inhumanely. They're violating civil rights. But what we can do immediately is require ICE to wear body cams, use marked vehicles, use judicial warrants, not just administrative warrants. There was a bipartisan border bill a few years ago. Wasn't great, but it sure would have been a step forward. Our president and Republicans killed it to make sure that immigration could remain a political football. Also, in the longer term, there are things we need to do, like reform processes for asylum, reform H-2 visas for temporary workers, reform the rights of workers, give a permanent residence to those that worked for us in Afghanistan. They fought for us. We need to fight for them. Reform asylum practices. Those are the short and long-term goals.
Okay, thank you. That wraps up everyone on immigration. So we will move on to our next question here, and that is on the war in Iran. 18 service members from the U.S. have been killed and another 400 injured in this conflict with Iran. And right now, the president is legally authorized to continue this military action in Iran without congressional approval until September 5th. Now, if you were in Congress right now and you had to vote to authorize the war in Iran, how would you vote on this? And tell us why. And you'll have 1 minute for this as well. And we will begin with Mark Davis. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm completely against the Iran war. This has gotten completely ridiculous. It's pathetic, really, how Republicans have continued to capitulate to Trump to the point that they're allowing him to kill our service members. I mean, the amount of capitulation that we have right now in the White House, that's why I decided not to run with a party, with a Republican or a Democrat, because both parties are taking the AIPAC money, right? We got to get rid of AIPAC. We got to get rid of this idea that we're here just to guard Israel. This is insanity. This is enough. You know, like I literally come to tears when I hear about these service members dying. And Trump tweets out stupid tweets like he hasn't killed as many as previous war efforts. This is insanity, guys, and it's infected the entire Republican Party. So I just ask you, please do not vote for a Republican. If you're not going to vote for me, please vote for a Democrat.
John Harris.
So just speaking as somebody who's been in the military for the last 20 years, still serving today in the Army Reserves, I've been deployed 4 times to Iraq, Afghanistan, Qatar, and I know what it's like to be a frontline soldier. My job was infantry when I first came in, so I know what it's like to be shot at, to watch your friends pass away on the battlefield. So my answer to how would I vote is no. This wasn't done with any shred of military planning. It was, thumping their chests and saying, yeah, we got this, and just, Leroy Jenkins off into the sunset. And I don't necessarily think that that's a way that you plan military operations, because when it comes to our sons and daughters, if my daughters ever decide to join the military, I would want to know that they have leaders who are actually planning to, preserve their lives and not just spend them recklessly.
Thank you, and thank you for your service, sir. And now that question to Kelly Kirshner.
Thanks, Holly. My oldest brother, like John, served a career in the Army, just retired 2 years ago, and served multiple tours in the Middle East. And I would vote no against this. I think what we have known for 47 years across successive Republican Democratic administrations, this has been, it's not like Iran has been a new issue. We were told less than a year ago that we had obliterated their nuclear capacity. And what changed, were we lied to then, and what changed over this 47-year period? What changed is we have a reckless administration and, frankly, a reckless Congress that is completely abdicating their authority to rein in on the executive and what they're doing, and taking us into a war of choice that we were told we would never go into, that is now reaching in excess of $100 billion, that is really leaving in tatters our historic allied relationships throughout Europe and now the Middle East as well. It needs to stop, and the level of impact on the loss of life, on our economy, et cetera, needs to be brought to an end.
The question is, if you had to vote today to authorize the war in Iran, how would you vote and why? To Tamika Lyles now.
I would absolutely vote no. As a Air Force veteran who worked in the medical field, I've seen so many of my brothers and sisters in uniform come in from fighting. This war was something that he chose to do. It was not something that we had to do. And when I think about even one of my opponents that has the ability to be deployed right now at any time, because despite what our president says, we're not in an excursion. We're at war. And it needs to be taken seriously. We are spending over $1 billion a day with this. And this is causing repercussions on all Americans here. So absolutely not.
And thank you for your service as well. And now the question to Mr. Pearson.
This is absolutely where Congress has everything to do with exercising its role of supervision, its authority. I would absolutely vote no, because when you look at what we're going through right now with this illegitimate war, 1/5 of the world's oil supply is not able to go through the Strait of Hormuz because of this. We have destroyed our relationship with our allies. It is affecting every aspect of our lives. Not only is fuel going up, but because of fuel, our farmers are having to pay more for their diesel fuel. They're paying more for their fertilizer, if they can even get fertilizer. It's affecting everything. Here's where Congress can come in and actually be effective by saying absolutely not, no.
All right, Jan Snyder.
Another no, but I disagree with part of the premise. I'm not sure. In fact, I don't think the president is legally authorized to continue this war. It was illegal from day one. The Constitution gives Congress the power to declare war. It names the president commander-in-chief. To resolve some of that tension, Congress passed the War Powers Act. It has been disregarded. This war is illegal. Trump felt triumphant over Venezuela and thought Iran will be easy. I think that was a grave mistake, and condolences to the families of those who've been killed and wounded, for the loss of life, for the loss of facilities that we have in the area, and for the whole mess we've made of not only Americans' lives, but innocent civilian Iranians.
Thank you. And finally, the question to Eddie Speir.
It's easy for Democrats now to say, oh, absolutely not. But where were they with Obama? Where were they with Biden? Where were they when the roles were reversed? They were lockstep with the president in continuing to push forward. And I would surmise that most people here would be the same way if the role was reversed. Now, what I would do is, first, I want to remind everybody that Iran has been the #1 exporter of terror in the world through Hezbollah, Hamas, and are trying to dictate all the terms in the Middle East. That's a big challenge. But what I would do specifically, it doesn't have to be a yes or a no vote. You can hold back and make sure that we actually have a game plan so that we're not trusting the radical Shia clerics that are there, because they can't be trusted. They're going to get a nuclear weapon. They're going to do everything they possibly can. And we need to take the 6 million expatriates and incorporate them so it's not our boots on the ground. It's the people who love their country, and we give them a game plan to take their country back.
All right, thank you all for the answer on Iran. Want to move on?
Do we have any time for rebuttal on that question? On this?
Go ahead.
I mean, by any metric, Eddie, of what you're saying with Iran, that we can agree on their support of terrorism, but all they are now is they are entrenched. You have a much further hardline son of the Ayatollah who is there. We have now relieved or we've given sanctions relief. Their oil is flowing. The ability for them to get that much more revenue by every metric. This is a dramatic failure that it should be bipartisan. And I think all of us in what we're saying, we're talking to Republicans. They are irate just as Democrats are. And I think to your point, if we need to join collectively and express that outrage. Thank you.
Also, Obama had a good deal with Iran. It included inspection. Most of the world was for it. And you're saying we should never have gone there?
Oh,
I like to bring back
the pallets of cash that were given, that was ridiculous. And when Trump said, hey, we're going to trust him for a second, that was a huge problem.
They just
The MOU is $300 billion.
All right, it's a conversation.
Sorry.
It's not a debate.
Oh,
Just a
wow.
reminder.
Yeah, I just like to bring it back to reality. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat.
Okay.
I do not agree with the war. So there's that. You just said all Democrats.
Duly
I'm not-
noted.
I'm
We
not a
do have to
Republican
move
or-
on.
You tried to be a Democrat, but
We
weren't
have to move
accepted.
on. All right.
You're trying to be a Republican
We did ask
and wear a
for
cowboy
voter
hat.
input on questions, and I want to get to one that we got the most requests for. Make sure we get to this. And that was on election integrity. The president has pushed, as you know, for the Save America Act, and it would require proof of citizenship to register and then voter ID at the polling places. So question is, are you in favor of this, and why or why not? You'll have 1 minute for this as well, and we will kick this one off with John Harris. Go ahead.
So in its current form, no. I think that in its current form, it really just is a poll tax because you do have a subset of our population that doesn't have ready access to whether that be their birth certificate, have a passport because they've never left the country, and so on. But also recognizing that my colleagues across the aisle feel like there is some election integrity issues, right? So the quick solve to this is make it like the draft. We no longer have to go register for the draft. You're automatically enrolled at the age of 18. So if you're an American citizen, you're born here, you're automatically enrolled. They send your information to your closest polling station based off of your home of record. And then you can move on to the people who are naturalized and go through that process that way. But realistically, in its current form, no. The SAVE Act is just going to cause more issues for people who have changed their name or had issues with their identification. So no.
Kelly Kirshner.
Yeah, no, I think this would be an example of, searching for a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. We have had, 6 years where we've tried to have an understanding of voter fraud. And it seems like the most egregious, only documented cases were a few, I believe, in Pennsylvania, and they were actually Republicans. And so what we really need to do is stop the violence on voter disenfranchisement. 25% of Pinellas County's African-American voters in the past 4 years alone have been now removed from the voter roll. Why are we not having a conversation in this country of how we encourage and engage everyone to participate in this process? Why are we constantly seeking to suppress people's right to participate? So if it's John's solution, like that, the same with the draft, whatever it is, we should be seeking bipartisan solutions to ensuring that we have fair elections and that everyone has the right to vote and should be voting.
Tamika Lyles.
I think that it's all just baloney. And I'm going to tell you why. Because as long as the Republicans are in control and they're doing what they want to do, we're not hearing about voting fraud and all of this. It is when there's that so-called blue wave that's coming through. Now we want to really talk about voter fraud and so forth. But here's the thing. I'm all for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, because I believe that all people deserve the right to vote here. And there should not be suppression of their voices. And there has been suppression. And I especially find it very, very amusing that the one party that has absolutely no accountability, shows absolutely none whatsoever, wants to talk about integrity. When we have those that have committed sexual crimes as elected officials and they don't want to hold them accountable, but you want to talk about integrity.
Glenn Pearson.
I definitely do not support the SAVE Act. I'm totally against that. Before I started my small business, I was a broadcast journalist. I was an Emmy award-winning broadcast journalist, and what I was able to do was to look at facts and separate fact from fiction. There is nothing to support that there's been all kinds of voter fraud in this country. This is something that is absolutely not needed. It's only in order to suppress the vote, in order to make chances for Republicans to be able to win. This is something that will disenfranchise many women who've been married and they've changed their last name. It's a way of just ferreting out certain voters. So I'm against it completely.
Thank you. Jan Snyder?
I oppose it as well. We are currently required to show identification at polling places, which they check. As to originally to require passports or birth certificates, not only affects women, but people abroad, people in the military, lower income people. The whole thing is a hoax. Also, though, we're further decimating voting rolls, particularly of women and liberals and people of color, by destroying the Voting Rights Act. The Supreme Court recently colluded in that when it effectively got rid of Article 2. We're making this a country where people who we want to vote get to vote. Not everyone is equal. Thank you.
And the question is, do you support the Save America Act? Why or why not? To Eddie Speir.
Yes, I do. And since I'm the only Republican, can I get 6 minutes on this one?
No, but go ahead.
Okay, so the head of the RNC is Joe Gruters and Evan Power, and they've shown that they don't care about election integrity because throughout Florida, they have purged America First Republicans. That's a big problem, and everybody needs to know that that has happened. And please check my website for some more of this information. But also, last time we were all talking, we had the same conversation, and I put it out there. I said, I will show you the proof of election fraud that's happening. And I put it out there, and I don't think I've heard anything from any of you guys, but I brought the receipts and said there is fraud, and we do need to have election integrity, and we need to reform the process with just simply voter ID.
We'll wrap this up with Mark Davis.
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing is cuckoo. It's just another Republican shenanigan. I agree with Tamika. I agree with Jan. The whole thing's crazy. There isn't a real issue. This is a fake issue. And it's weird, you know, like I've only lived in Florida for 4 years. It's weird hearing Eddie not think that Florida can handle its own elections like it was constitutionally obligated to. It's in the Constitution that the states are supposed to run their own elections. So having federal interference is against our Constitution. So that's kind of where that whole conversation should just go away. And if you want to add to it, let's just be real here. Why do we want to give a pedophile more power over our local elections? This is crazy. Everybody knows this man is corrupt. Why do we want to give this guy more power? We can have a conversation maybe after you kick the pedophile out. Let's do that first.
We have to move on quickly. I'm sorry, we have to get to closing statements now. Our questions went by so fast, but we will each have 30 seconds for your closing statements. And for those, we will begin with Kelly Kirshner. Go ahead, 30 to you.
Thanks again for hosting and to our sponsors. What I haven't shared is I'm a former commissioner and mayor of Sarasota, returned Peace Corps volunteer. I've spent my entire life, I think, really working for people that are not being represented by the system. And it's time that we bring some level of, God forbid, common sense with an interest to work across the aisle to address these issues that we've talked about for this past hour that just aren't getting addressed and need to get fixed. Things that I did during my 4 years in office and as mayor of Sarasota.
Tamika Lyles.
I think that, look, we have a lot of changes that need to be made, but what we don't need is anybody sitting on the line where you can't determine whether they're a Democrat or a Republican because they're accepting money from across the line, so clearly they can be bought. We don't need liars that's telling you that, hey, I was elected by the people, but in fact they were appointed. We don't need people that are facing sexual allegations there. We're already dealing with that. We need people that are ready to serve day one.
Glenn Pearson.
Truth, accountability, and people over powerful interests. That's what my platform is all about. Thank you very much for having us and hosting this. I just want to make sure that we return power to the people, because right now the system is rigged in favor of the super wealthy, the well-connected, and big corporations. The power of the people is always more powerful than the people in power as long as we're together.
Thank you. Jan Snyder.
I have a lot of experience dealing with Congress. I've been invited to testify before committees. I have lobbied Congress, practicing law in the District of Columbia for decades. I have drafted bills, small and large, that Congress actually passed in the good old days of bipartisanship. I've been a registered foreign agent for Canada. Also, I have the background. I am a Yale-educated lawyer with a PhD in political science from Yale. I have written dozens of articles and a book on federal issues. I would submit, if you want to know more, go to www.votejan.com.
Thank you. Eddie Speir.
Can I get the 5 seconds back? Thank you. So, yeah, I'm the largest grassroots candidate in Florida history, as measured by the number of petitions that were signed. So nobody's talked to more people, knocked on more doors, and heard more about what people need and what representation looks like. I'm also an educator, and I believe in the Socratic method. I believe that we shouldn't just disenfranchise each other. We need to have these conversations, and I've really that's been great having these conversations. Thank you for having this conversation. We need to have more of this to heal the rift that's happening within our country.
Thank you.
I have also qualified by petitions, more than
Thank you.
2,700.
Thank you. And now closing statements to Mark Davis.
Yeah, I'm just a nobody. I was going to do the whole, like, I don't know what to do with my hands joke thing, but again, I'm just a pissed off dad in the middle of red Florida. I'm not a Democrat or Republican. I think they're both corrupt. I'm not going against Democrats or Republicans. I'm going against the people that bottom. And then you talk about experience. You know, I don't think experience really matters, because a lot of people say Mitch McConnell has a lot of experience, and we don't even know if he's alive. So I've lived the policies that they put in place, and I hate them. And I want to go fix it, and then I want to get back to my family and start being a dad again.
And last but not least, 30 seconds for your closing statement, Mr. John Harris.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I'm a 20-year Army veteran. I'm only 40 years old, so I've spent half of my life in service to this nation. And this job is not a higher office for me. This is a continuation of my service to support and defend the Constitution. And more than that, I'm a husband and a father. And I believe one of my mentors, he said it best. If you walk into a room and it's, you know, messed up, you want to leave it better than you found it. And I think right now our country needs us to leave Congress better than we have it today.
That is all the time that we have. I want to sincerely thank each and every one of you for coming. It is very important that we continue to talk to each other and talk through differences and have these conversations. So thank you all so much for being here. And thank you everyone for watching at home our conversation with the candidates. Remember to get out to the polls for the primary on August 18th, and then the general election is on November 3rd. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for participating, and everyone have a great night.